18 famous musicians who went from rich to bankrupt. Not all broke musicians remain broke, but the road to recovery is harder than the fall to financial ruin. It's not uncommon for an artist to rise to stardom fast, and with that fast rise to fame comes quick fortune. Many people who did not grow up with wealth are not prepared or educated on how to handle money. Others are swept up by stardom and recklessly spend their money thinking their stardom and income will never go away, the broke rock star trope. Some artists simply get caught in expensive drug habits that alter both their bank size and their better judgment. Finally, other poorer souls are swindled by the very people they trusted most, such as their families or managers. These 18 famous musicians lost it all one way or another. Some of these musicians recovered, while sadly, some died poor. Number 1. Meatloaf. Meatloaf, Marvin Lee a day, sold records. A lot of records. Bat Out of Hell sold approximately 43 million copies. So how did a dude who sold so many records go broke? After finding success with Bat Out of Hell, he naturally decided to record a follow-up. But there was a little problem. He had lost his voice. At around the same time, his old producer Jim Steinman, along with others, had decided to sue Meatloaf. With over 40 lawsuits mounted against Marvin, his only recourse was filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Luckily, for Meatloaf, he found success once more in 1993 with Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell, which featured the famous song which still has people asking, won't do what? Number 2. Toni Braxton. Toni Braxton has sold over 67 million records and has won 7 Grammys. Here's another number 2. That's how many times she's declared bankruptcy. She first declared bankruptcy in 1998 from credit card bills and exorbitant monthly expenses. Luckily, 2 years later in 2000, she jump-started her career with her new album, The Heat. Quote, but financial woes struck again. After agreeing to an extended run in Las Vegas, she suffered some health issues which forced her to cancel the rest of the Vegas dates. These cancellations made her financially liable and she had no recourse but to declare bankruptcy for the second time in 2010. Number 3. Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent used to sell out shows across America, which made him a lot of dough. However, you're as only good as the people you trust. His managers made some bad decisions with his money, putting his assets into failing businesses, which included a mink farm. These failing ventures forced him to declare bankruptcy in 1980. Number 4. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye had a generally tragic life, so it's no surprise he couldn't escape financial troubles. Because of an affair which led to ruined marriage, he was forced to pay child support and alimony. But, by this point, he was already too broke to make the payments. He squandered his early wealth on drugs, cars, and property. Because of his obligation to make payments to his ex-wife, he had to file for bankruptcy. He made a deal to pay her royalties on his next album sale, but it ended up being a commercial failure. Number 5. David Crosby. After Crosby became a solo artist, his life seemed to unravel. He became addicted to drugs, which led to erratic behavior that eventually led to his arrest. After Crosby's arrest for a hit-and-run and concealed gun possession, his sales floundered. With no money coming in and lots going out, he was forced to go bankrupt. Number 6. MC Hammer. Can't touch this. This is what he said to the IRS when they wanted their $100,000 in back taxes. He sold millions of albums in the early 90s, but he couldn't manage the immediate influx of cash. He reportedly bought a $30 million mega house where he employed a staff costing $500,000 each month. He ended up nearly $14 million in debt, owing money not only to the IRS, but also to his lawyers and Deion Sanders. In 1996 he finally admitted he was not too legit and declared himself bankrupt. Number 7. Billy Joel. Credit, David Shankbone. Superstar Billy Joel is one of the best-selling musicians ever. But with great money comes great financial responsibility. Billy Joel's one-time manager, brother-in-law, and daughter's godfather, Frank Weber, stole right from under Joel's nose. While managing Joel's money, he used it in a series of bad loans and risky business investments. Billy Joel was shocked when he found out years afterward in a financial audit. He ended up suing Weber for $90 million for fraud. Number 8. George Clinton. Man, George Clinton got screwed big time. Considered by many to be one of the fathers of funk, George Clinton never really made much money. Because of either a bad business deal or fraud by his record label, Clinton was forced to relinquish his own publishing rights. He allegedly filed for bankruptcy whilst failing to mention his songs written from 1976 to 1983. Disclosing this material as a source of potential income would have potentially helped him regain nearly $100 million in royalties. But he never saw a dime of it. Clinton denies filing for bankruptcy, said it was a forged filing, and is to this day actively fighting to regain his copyrights. More recently, he has started online campaign funding for recording studio time and legal fees in an effort to regain his publishing rights, which he claims were unlawfully taken away from him. Number 9. Leif Garrett. Late 1970s teen heartthrob Leif Garrett is another story of someone who wasn't ready for the sudden amount of riches that fame brought. After his initial success, his fame died out, but his spending habits, along with a nasty drug habit, drove him to bankruptcy. As part of his bankruptcy filings, he allegedly claimed that his only monthly income was a $1,000 allowance his mommy gave him. Number 10. Isaac Hayes. After Hayes' early successes, his career started to slow down. While he was riding the road bumps, his record label became insolvent. Sadly, they owed him $5 million, which he was depending on to pay his debts. With no prospects of ever seeing his millions, Hayes was forced to declare bankruptcy and give up future royalties to satisfy those he owed. Number 11. Willie Nelson. You might have thought Willie Nelson went broke because he outlived his retirement fund, but nope. He also didn't blow it all on Mary Jane. Instead, he lost his fortune because of back taxes. $32 million to be exact. Willie claimed his accountants mismanaged his money and never paid his taxes, instead opting to put them into tax shelters. In the early 90s, he recorded an album called The IRS Tapes, Pull By My Memories, and made a cameo in a Taco Bell commercial in a last-ditch effort to pay off the taxman. He settled up with the IRS in 1993. Number 12. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis was an icon. He charted multiple genres at number 1 simultaneously and helped shape rock and roll. But, not even a rock icon can escape the ridicule and ostracization that comes with marrying a 13-year-old girl, who was also his second cousin. The backlash was instant and his career and record sales simply could not withstand the blow. It took years for him to regain any credibility, but by then it was too late, and he was millions in debt, at which point he filed for bankruptcy. Number 13. Mick Fleetwood. Drummer and founding member of Fleetwood Mac, Mick Fleetwood should have never had to worry about money. His album Rumors was one of the highest selling of all time. I guess he thought the money would never run out, and each album would bring equal income because he spent millions of dollars on cocaine. Yes, he estimates he spent $8 million on cocaine, and the rest in real estate and other useless junk. His Booger Sugar Fund eventually ran out and he went bankrupt in 1984. Number 14. Ron Isley. Lead singer of the Isley Brothers, Ron Isley, is also another famous person who refused to pay his taxes. He decided it would be a great idea to not file his taxes for years, and the IRS noticed. They seized his property, leaving Isley without his yacht and fancy cars. Isley nearly lost the rights to his own songs since he owed $5 million in back taxes, but his judge must have been a fan because in 2001 he cut a bond deal which allowed him to retain the copyright. 5 years later he was sent to prison for just over 3 years. Can you guess why? He once again failed to file his tax returns. Number 15. Tom Petty. After releasing 2 successful albums, Tom Petty had little in his bank account to show for it. He blames his record label, who he thought treated him like a piece of meat. He desperately wanted out of his contract with his abusive label. He devised a plan where he would pay for his own upcoming album, and never allow it to be released. This strategy allowed him to declare bankruptcy in 1979, freeing him from his terrible contract. Number 16. Wayne Newton. Did you hear the tragic news? Wayne Newton was recently forced to downsize to a smaller mansion as a part of his bankruptcy filing. Newton's bankruptcy might be the most complicated of all. The proceedings are all tangled up in related lawsuits containing allegations of sexual harassment, fraud, breach of contract and conspiracy. To complicate things, most of his assets are tied up in a holding company which he uses to manage his assets. His debt to former employees and back taxes owed to the IRS forced his hand into filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2013. Not surprisingly, he also filed a similar bankruptcy in 1992. Number 17. Harry Nielsen. Harry was a millionaire before the age of 30, but his money couldn't last into his 50s. He was a star early in his career. But he couldn't survive the 1980s as the musical landscape changed. To compound his woes, it turns out his manager was a crook. She swindled millions from Nielsen and other clients, leaving Nielsen with only $300 in his checking account. Because of these setbacks, he ended up in debt to over 70 parties, and start receiving foreclosure notices in the 1990s. Nielsen once stated his greatest fear was going broke, so perhaps this led to his heart failure, which caused his death just months after he filed for bankruptcy in 1994. Number 18. Michael Jackson. One of Michael Jackson's best decisions of his career was perhaps the move to acquire ATV Music, the label who owned the rights to many popular Beatles songs. The move made Jackson even richer than he already was by netting him millions in royalties. However, with sexual molestation cases mounting against him and his habit of massive overspending on bizarre items, Jackson quickly became deeply in debt. He began borrowing millions from wealthy friends to avoid bankruptcy. While he was spared the shame of filing for bankruptcy, unlike the others on this list, it is rumored he died with nearly $500 million of debt, making him most likely the #1 most broke musician of all time.